So hi everyone, welcome back to this video, and this video is about the uses of metadata. So in the previous video I would have given you information on what is metadata, and I would have given you some examples. So if you haven't got to see that video, you can always click on the link given in the description box, and then you can maybe view this particular video which gives you why metadata. And so basically, metadata is data about data. We all know that. Oh, in other words, it's all possible information about an entity. So now, why this data? So metadata. So there are various uses and advantages of using metadata, but here are the three, advantages of using metadata, or the uses, or how metadata is used. So the very first one is finding relationships between entities. So if you don't know what an entity is, I would have explained that also in the previous video of the metadata. So you can click on that button. Simple, any name of any person, animal, or any other creature can come under entity. It can also be a place, and it can also be a object or a thing. So with metadata, you'll be able to find relationships between these entities, which is ultimately connecting the dots. We live in a world where we have to connect information, connect data, find relationships. So this metadata plays a very key role in that particular phase. The next one is organizing data. So we have tremendous amount of data being generated every day. Okay, there's data from IoT, from systems, applications. There's from structured data, unstructured data. There's data coming in from different devices. There's so much of data. So how do you actually organize this data? So for organizing data, metadata plays a very important role. And the last one is retrieve data. And it's not just simple retrieval of data, it's relevant data to the search. So nowadays, when you search for certain data, you don't get something that's not relevant. You either get the most relevant data, or it can be the second, third most relevant data of your search. So that is also where metadata plays an important role. So I'll be explaining these three in with some examples so that it's easy to grasp. So let's get into it. So if you've seen in the previous metadata video, I would have given you an example of how there was this guy, and he wanted to find out the details, or he wanted to contact another guy, Jade. So I've taken the same example. So let's say here in this particular example over here, there's an entity, okay, which is Jade, who's a person, and there's also another person over here, an entity called Melissa. So this is the metadata of Jade. That is some information about Jade. He's from the sales department. He works in XYZ company. He's 27 years old, lead, and also from New York. And also from this, we found there's a relationship that says Jade works in XYZ company, which is also an entity, and has some attributes, which is on the third floor B block. So we know that Jade works in XYZ company. And here we have an information about another entity, Melissa. And we also get the information saying that Jade and Melissa are colleagues. So, but if you notice here, the metadata for Melissa is New York, lead, 27 years old, sales. But we don't know from which company Melissa is from. So if you take a look at this, by knowing Jade is connected and works at XYZ company, and since Jade and Melissa are colleagues, we'll be able to identify that even Melissa works at XYZ company. So that's a way where you'll be able to find relationships, and also you'll be able to identify hidden data. It's all because of this external metadata. So another example is, let's say it's a very base example, but something that you can relate to. So let's say I, as a person, you have information about me as a person, and you know that my mother is ABC. So now ABC, which is my mother, you get there's some information about who is her husband. So with just this information, since I am, related to my mother, I'm the daughter for my mother, and there's a husband for my mother, though there's no relationship given directly, still my mother's husband will definitely be my father. So that's some, hidden relationships that can be identified with some metadata. So that's how you find hidden relationships using metadata. So here you can say that now Melissa also works at XYZ company, and you can even connect these two entities saying that Melissa works at XYZ company, and also the metadata or an attribute gets filled up for this particular entity. So this is how hidden relationships are between entities are analyzed and found out using metadata. So this is just about three entities, but imagine there can be so many entities in the world we live in. And ultimately, when you see how data is connected, this is how data will be connected. But this is also very little information. But when you see the entire world's information being connected, it would be like an entire galaxy being connected together. That's how data gets connected today in today's world with the streams of data flowing in. So this is about the first example and the use of metadata. The second one is organizing data. So in the metadata video that I showed first, I would have shown how metadata was, taken for a particular book. So I'm going to use the same example. So now we are having a pile of books here in the library, and we are trying to organize these books. So it's not physically organizing the books. Of course, yes, physically books will be organized. But when we come to digitally transformed systems, when we are dealing with data that needs to be digitally or digitalized, that time this organizing process is different, and how that is done is with metadata. So now let's say these are all the books that I have in my library. Okay, so here I'm using an example of 6 books, and these are not actually real books, these are just books with my own dummy data. So let's say I have 6 books, okay, in my library, and if you see, this is the metadata of each book. So you have the publication, you have the genre, published date, pages, author, library, XYZ, and you have other information. So now with this information, I can organize my data in a number of ways. So always, make a note of this. So there's publication, genre, then you have published date, pages, author, you have the aisle, you have the shelf, rack, book, and then you have the book name. So how do you organize data? So here if you see, there are number of ways that you can organize data, but I'm giving you an example of just 3 ways. Okay, so if you look at each structure over here, it's like a hierarchy over here. Okay, but if you see, the first way in which you can organize books is by publication, then under publication you have genres, and then you have authors, and then books. Or you can go with genre, the publication, the author, and the book. Or this can be the third way in which you organize your books. So this is nothing but metadata. So if you see the publication, genre, author, book, all this is metadata, and just with this metadata you get to organize information. So here if you see, say for example, I'm taking this particular structure. So based on the books I have here, I'm going to arrange my books according to this structure. So here if you look at, see, first one is publication. So I have, in my set of books, I have 3 publications. So one is Johnny's publication, then you have New York publication, and you have Fresh publication. So now it's organized with publication, which is the first level. Then you go with genre. So below Johnny's publication, you have genres over here, which is you have the science and you have the comedy genre. Similarly, under New York, you have science, and under Fresh publication, you have comedy. So likewise, below the genre, you're going in now for authors. So these are the authors: Peter Kennedy, Mary Brown. Then you have Jaden, Matt, you have John Jason. So all these are the authors. And finally, at the last level, you have the book title. So this is a way in which you can actually organize data. So when you have to traverse data and retrieve data, it's going to be very much in an organized manner. So this is So this is just one structure in which you can, organize your data. But there are a number of ways in which you can choose to organize. So a simple way to understand is maybe it's something like a folder structure, but you can, I think you'll be able to, visualize and see how this metadata is being used to organize data. So if you see here, you must be thinking metadata, but this is also some data. Imagine my books. I'm not using the book story to organize my data, but just with some pieces of information from here, which is the publication, genre, the author, I'm able to organize my book. So that is how metadata is used for organizing data. And the third one is to retrieve data. So imagine I'm having an entire, library of books, and then I'm having a system with all my books. Now imagine just trying to, retrieve your data without any metadata, and having to, go through every book just to find out the most relevant one or the exact search. So if you see here, metadata is used to retrieve data and the most relevant data. So for example, when you search for Johnny's publication, all the books that have the metadata tag as Johnny publications, definitely that will be retrieved. So simple as that. So if you want to see, there is metadata for every digital asset. So this is an example I want to show you. So this is just a sample image that I had on my system. And when you find out, more information or get information, you would see a lot of metadata over here. You'll see the preview of the asset. That's the, the file or whatever is the entity you're dealing with. You'll have the sharing and permission set. You'll have the last open date, the color. You'll have who created it, when it was created. You also have metadata tags. So based on all this metadata, you can also find and retrieve data. So that's how in this world where we have so much of data, these are some areas in which metadata play a very vital and key role. So whenever you're working with the file, also you have metadata tags, and when you see metadata tags, you should always know that it's used for quick search, it's used for organizing data, it's used for finding relationships, and that's how your AI gets built up with metadata, and definitely it's very important. So I hope that you got a little bit of information on what is, the different advantages. I can't say I covered everything, but these are some three that I thought of sharing with you. So if you found this really helpful, please do give this video a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do subscribe to this channel, and also do share your feedbacks. Thank you.